Hi, everyone. We are now on week 13. Because of some of the glitches in working with the clients, I'm going to try to squeeze in a couple more topics that I wasn't able to include in the lecture for the next couple of weeks. And this week, I decided to spend a little bit more time talking about influencer communication on social media. This is based on chapter 8 of your textbook, so this will need to be included in your study guide. So who exactly are the influencers now? Now, a couple of years ago, when I started teaching this concept in this class, 5140, this was a new terrain. Everybody was starting to think about this differently. It was a big deal that it's not just a celebrity that we're going to be reaching out to discuss our social media campaign. It's going to be individuals. It's going to be real people, not the celebrity endorsements anymore. And it was a big deal that a lot of quote unquote normal people are becoming influencers, equivalent to a celebrity follower at the time on social media, such as YouTube and Instagram. So by definition, influencers are anybody who wields influence over the general public, over the social media platform. This usually takes the format of celebrity endorsements, which means that the celebrity endorses a certain product as an individual, or a real person, right? Not a celebrity person, but a real person endorses some type of product, or use some type of product, or create some type of product. And the key to this is that what we deem as regular people have become an online celebrities who can powerfully engage other social media users. So any social media influencer are who they are for whatever expertise that they have, whatever knowledge that they have, and the relationship that they develop with the social media users because of these expertise and knowledge. So that's sort of the definition that we're looking on. And influencer communication, influencer marketing, influencer strategy, that's how everybody talks about this. But we, again, need to think about this in the context of PR, right? That we're talking about a relationship angle. And originally, one of the key reasons why many PR practitioners suggested and recommended using influencers had to do with the fact that this is a strategy or a tactic that could be used to build trust with the key audiences. That it's not just me, it's not just my organization saying something about me. It's actually a real people who are saying something positive about my brand or product. So the concept of it was based on building trust among key publics by including the real person, one of you guys, into our communication strategy. Also, it had to do with understanding the socio-technographics of my key audiences. So if anybody in my follower list is already a creator and a conversationalist, and they can promote my brand or organization or topic or whatever it is that I'm interested in, it was meant to be more authentic. Now, we fast forward to 2022, versus when I first started teaching this concept in 2018, I believe. So many things have changed. It's not seen as authentic anymore. Even around the time 2019 or 20, students have started to become a little bit more skeptic about influencer contents. Something needed to change. People needed to think about, who should be our influencer, what should be a standard for us in selecting an influencer other than the number of followers. But in essence, the whole purpose of starting an influencer communication or an influencer content was so that it's based on the relationship and the expertise, so that it's not just me as a brand talking about this. One of you guys is talking about my brand in a positive way. That was kind of the whole drive behind why PR had started to consider social media influencers as well. Dr. Freberg talks about different types of influencers in her textbook. Now, even this chapter, guys, have expanded so much over the years. I had her book since it was like one of these workbooks back in 2016 when nobody was, even thinking about having some type of social media PR textbook. She had one that was primarily for the instructors. And when she explained the influencers, it was just a couple of sentences. You need to find somebody who's not a celebrity, like an actor, actresses, or Hollywood star, but who can talk about your brand. That used to be all the definition that I had about influencer, or a type of influencer that I had. Whereas now we're dealing with a whole list of type of influencer that the textbook from page 198 to 202, there's a big table on page 203 that I want you guys to pay attention to in terms of specific characteristics of each of these influencers. But this just shows how much of this particular communication strategy on social media has changed over the years. I have to be very mindful of the contents that my daughter watches on her YouTube because of the number of kid influencers I see. It's kind of like, you don't want your daughter to have this sort of friend. There are a few kid influencers that I'm sort of sitting there thinking, you know what? I don't want you to be watching this video, right? There's also the virtual influencers with the more meta, the approach, the virtual reality approach that we're talking about. Some people are just plain creators. They don't see themselves as influencer. I believe a lot of the TikTok and Instagram accounts that I follow for my knitting and crochet tutorials, I see them less as an influencer. I see them more as a creator, but they also have those types of paid content where they get sponsored with yarn and crochet hooks and knitting needles, and they give a review, right? And they now have to disclose that some things are paid or endorsed or sponsored, because like I said, I kind of lived through this marketing strategy where at the beginning, there was a lot of scams, right? That it was sponsored, but they didn't disclose it. So that's when FTC decided to step in and say, that's not cool, right? That's unethical. That's lying to the consumers, all those sorts of stuff. So the size of their follower or their influence is also still a category to consider. We're talking about celebrity, mega, and micro, nano influencers. But as I'm going to talk about in a bit, because there are so many types of influencers now, what has become more important for us to consider is less about the number of followers that each of these individuals have. It's more about the relevance to what I'm trying to do for my brand if I reach out and connect with these influencers. And that has become a lot more important these days. So an example of influencer marketing that I considered as successful enough to kind of talk about this in class today is one of the, I believe this was back in 2016 or 15. It is old, I admit it. But for me, this shows what I would think a good influencer content would look like on social media now. Okay, not because it's this, mega makeup person on YouTube, not because that person has 1 million followers on TikTok. No, that wasn't the case. The reason why I chose this was because it was so strategically planned out with many different topics that was relevant at the time, in addition to finding the right influencer. So Microsoft teamed up with National Geographic on the International Women's Day. I'm going to look up the date really quick. Yes, this was 2017. For International Women's Day in 2017, Microsoft teamed up with National Geographic to create a influencer moment for female explorers in STEM. So what they were trying to do with their hashtag, Make What's Next, their message was to activate girls' interests and excitement about anything that has to do with STEM. And guess who they chose as their influencer? It was, I'm looking up the name really quick here. She was Jennifer something. Yes, Jennifer Adler. She's a female scientist, and she is a National Geographic. She was selected as the National Geographic Young Explorer of that year. Now, when you think about influencer, primarily as part of the number of followers, number of likes, shares, whatnot, she's probably not going to count as much, right? But because this was International Women's Day, because this was a STEM campaign that was primarily focused on young girls, 8 and older, they made a point to reach out to a female scientist with National Geographic as their influencer to discuss everything in terms of streaming live, talking about events, right? Making the moment on International Women's Day with this influencer. That's what counts. And for me, especially more and more so in the future, because we're dealing with what, like these mega influencers and meta influencers and celebrity influencers and all of that, this will be the type of influencer content that will stand out. It's not just based on followers and likes. It's not just based on how attractive their contents are. It's not just based on glamour or flamboyant anything. It's the strategic relevance to the day that you would launch it, to the purpose, as well as to the audience that they're trying to reach out to. Okay, so this won an award, I believe, with something on, yes, the annual Shorty Social Good Awards. This was the second award that was granted in 2017. And you can tell why this made sense at the time, that it's not your everyday influencer that you would think about, but she was influential enough in this topic and relevant enough and placed extremely strategically to make sense for the brand, reaching out to the individual, creating the contents with the individual so that it relates to the key audiences, girls 8 and older, interested in STEM, so on and so forth, on International Women's Day. Okay, so that's something that I wanted to emphasize in terms of the direction that I'm trying to gear you guys toward when you think about influencer contents. So how do you find influencers? These are the 3 R's. Now, your textbook talks about all the different types of specifics that you need to go through, such as, understand the guidelines by the FTC. What are the actual steps? It's from page 210 to 215 that Dr. Freiberg talks about the detailed steps in which you need to take when you think about who to reach out, how to reach out, what to include in your contract, and so on and so forth. But here, I want to talk about who do you find as the influencer there. And the example that I showed you, I hope, should guide you in terms of what you should consider as an influencer. First has to do with the relevance, okay? First and foremost is the relevance, okay? The National Geographic and Microsoft influencer content made sense because the influencer that they picked was so relevant to the International Women's Day, Women in STEM, National Geographic, and the age group that they were trying to reach out to, right? So whoever is sharing the content and developing something with their expertise and knowledge, it needs to be relevant to your organizational goal and the particular market that you're trying to reach out to by communicating with, by working with this influencer. Second, you have to think about the reach. Now, this is where it gets tricky, right? Do you want to have just these mega influencers, which will be quite costly to hire as part of your influencer communication if you choose to do so. So because of the cost benefit, if sort of thinking that you have to do, you need to kind of weigh in. Are you going to go for size, or are you going to go for the relevance of the reach? Are the people that are currently following your influencer actually the people that you intend to reach out to? I would expect Jennifer Adler's followers on social media were already those who are very interested in STEM, who were very passionate about having more female join the STEM field, and so on and so forth, right? So this number of follower base may have been smaller in comparison to the celebrity and mega influencer that you could consider, but the relevance of her followers made a lot sense in terms of the goal that Microsoft would have initiated to reach out to this group. Third, it has to do with the resonance. Kind of goes back to the issue of relevance here too. Is it going to resonate with the people you are reaching out to? So these are the 3 R's that you need to consider whenever you think about the influencers. Couple of traditional ways, just keep a list of people who comes to your event. One of the things that I always tell my 5140 students to do when they do this assignment is look through the people who usually joins any PRSA event or Wayne State PR event, right? Because these are the people who are quite successful in their field, and the way that they talk about you on social media can matter, right? Do research around an event when you reach out to them, okay? So whatever you do, if you are going to reach out to that person on social media, you have to make sure that you read the stuff that they posted on these platforms before you reach out to them. Couple of free tools that you can consider. This used to be very limited. I used to have this thing called a follower wonk or something that I had done exercise with in class with the students in terms of who they should consider as an influencer or who they shouldn't. It's gotten a lot easier. This list actually comes from Dr. Freiberg's textbook. Hashtags are good ways to seek them. TikTok has a very specific kind of grid in terms of the topics that you can follow too. The popular contents would show up a lot more frequently, and you can look through their account to see what is more relevant, whether that person is relevant to you or not. Upinfluence and Hype Auditor, those are also good tools for you to consider. But in these days, it's a little less about the number of followers. It's more about, are they talking about your brand? Are they relevant, resonant, and have enough reach for the audience that you're reaching out to? So question with the number of followers. This is where it gets very interesting. This is a result from a study back in 2015. And the number of people, as the number of people increase in terms of the number of followers, you would think that it goes up, right? The engagement actually goes down after a certain number. So for Instagram at that time in 2015, the recommendation was to go for anybody if you're dealing with, to go for Instagram if your influencer is between the age of 16 to 24. I'm guessing this has gotten older on Instagram. This hasn't been updated in terms of research yet, but I'm guessing that the younger age group are more on TikTok now, and Instagram is starting to kind of move away from it and becoming even like a copy paste platform from TikTok, right? That they kind of link it together, so to speak. Do consider the possibility of selecting the wrong influencers. It's up to you to define who's considered as the not right influencer, but the number of followers, it seems, is not going to be a big factor. Just because somebody has a smaller number of followers, it doesn't mean that he or she is the not right person for your organization to reach out to. So influencers with too many followers, again, like I showed you, like I'm showing you here, there's a peak point where the influence kind of drops down. So you need to kind of weigh between what you're going to do. It depends on your focus, right? For the Microsoft example that I showed you, the number of followers may have been smaller for that particular individual, but the content or context was relevant. So the focus to reach out to female girls interested in STEM, it made sense. So the follower was a little less. So we're now reaching a time where it depends now. Should you focus primarily on the number of followers? No, but it depends. Right? It depends on the 3R. It depends on your strategic goal. It depends on your budget, right? And how much that mega influencer is relevant and resonating with your contents, as well as your brand identity and the audience that you're reaching out to. So those are there. We've gotten to a place where the factors that we need to consider for influencer content have gotten have increased so much. It used to be, well, she has a lot of followers and she's talking about Detroit, so I'll probably just reach out to her. No, it's no longer the case anymore. Okay, so finding the right influencer, a lot of times we need to think a little bit outside of the box. If your searches for the individuals are too specific, like makeup, this age group, whatever, it's going to be difficult for you to identify people who may be influential in your industry. You need to think a little bit broader when you're reaching out to the people. It's gotten a lot more segmented these days on Instagram and TikTok. So for example, if I'm trying to find a creator on knitting, like I have no trouble finding anybody that I'm interested in. But again, it kind of goes back to what your purpose of doing this influencer content is going to be about. How you decide on that focus will be who's your target audience. Is the target audience you're reaching out to, are they following this person that you're considering for your influencer content? If the answer is yes, then you got the match, right? So think about education, where they got their education, where they're located. I will be more interested in looking for creator, influencer in crochet knitting if she is in the Detroit area. A little less interesting for me if she was in like California, for example, because whatever thing that they can do over there, it's a little less relevant to me. If I'm going to be part of a knitting community, I would think I want to be part of a local community where I can actually, do something about it, right? Life hacks, again, that would be one category for you to consider. What are some of the advices for small businesses? Those are also some broader context to consider. Gamers as well. This was, and I'm talking about the screen capturing software. Yeah, that was the background. Sorry, guys. But you get the idea that you have an idea. Think about outside key terms like you did when you did the keyword search. Don't focus primarily on the directly relevant keywords, but try to branch out a little bit. Okay. Okay, questions to ask when evaluating influencer. There's a whole list of this on page 211 and 212. It kind of, the 5 that I selected here kind of emphasizes everything that I talked about up till this point. Who are your target audiences? Are your target audiences following this person? If so, what is his or her influence over them? Does he engage with that group of target audience that I'm trying to reach out to? Are they authentic? Are they doing this for real? Are they not faking it? This is becoming a big topic, right? That I feel like almost every kid influencer that pops up in my daughter's YouTube feed, they look so fake to me. I don't know where the authenticity is. Maybe that's something that is worth a research effort for the next stage, but I don't see authenticity as much as I would like to see. As I used to see in some of the very good influencer contents, right? So that's going to be a big life-changing factor to consider when you are picking out the influencers. Do they fit your brand? Do they fit your organization? Does their value match with what you want to be on social media? I want to be on social media, 20-year-old cool and hip knitter. If I'm going to match up with, I don't know, a boring professor who occasionally knits, there's not an alignment with a brand fit. Her voice versus my voice is going to be so different. And the community is also going to be very different, right? So whoever you pick, does he or she have a voice or an identity or a content that matches who you want to be for your organization and brand on social media? That alignment is very important. how engaged is the community around that person? Now, this is another thing that has changed a lot over the years. One of the things with influencer marketing used to be all these fake accounts and fake followers. Now we can tell, right? Like how often are they responding back to the messages? How are they responding back to questions? How are they engaging with their overall follower community, if not the larger community that they're a part of? Right? So all of these are kind of boiling back to the 3R that I discussed, and how whenever we are talking about influencers now, it's a little less about the numbers and the metrics. It's more about the niche focus that is relevant to your target audience, that's relevant to your brand voice, as well as your overall presence on social media as well. Target influencers with your contents. How do you reach out to them? Tag them. That's the easiest way to go. Recruit them, comment on it, talk about it, don't spam it, right? Try to do as professionally as possible. There is an FTC guideline in terms of working for any type of paid content now. So, and this is something that's probably not going to be directly relevant to you right now, but should you work in a PR agency or a marketing firm, when you reach out to influencers with like meta number of followers and whatnot, you do need to have payment, a contract for the payment and the number of deliverables and all of that kind of written out. This is FTC regulated, unlike the way it used to be way back when I started teaching this class. So this is something that FTC takes very seriously. So you do need to consider that as part of the strategy as well. Couple of dark sides of influencer communication. This year, you guys had to watch any type of social media movie and kind of, you know, talk about the implications that comes from the documentary movie. So we didn't watch anything with Fyre Festival directly, but this is sort of like this plus that Netflix series, name is completely slipping my mind, about that fake German countess who was actually an American. There's a lot of memes going around with that actress, but you probably know what I'm talking about. These are the dark sides, and these are the examples of the dark sides of influencer contents that has evolved over the year. When you are reaching out to an influencer so that he or she has decided to speak with you for your brand, you need to recognize the fact that her culture is now being promoted with your brand. As we have seen from the Microsoft and National Geographic example that I showed you for the influencer content, the culture that Jennifer Adler stands for STEM, international women, female scientists, everything, that's the culture that National Geographic and Microsoft is promoting. Now, that's a good example, but if you're talking about something that is not authentic, almost fake, too flamboyant, too materialistic, so on and so forth, or not for kids, anything, you need to recognize the fact that that's the culture that you're now promoting. So there's an element of ethical decision-making that needs to happen here as well. Do not put pressure on your clients with a fake situation. And this is something that for those of you who watch Fyre Festival for your documentary assignment, that you probably learned. It was just so bad, right? But remember, the culture that was being promoted was very flamboyant, was very, 1%, not relatable, lack of authenticity. All of that can easily raise a red flag, right? So like I said, it kind of goes back to the ethical decision making here. If I'm going to work with this influencer, the celebrity mega influencer, what is the culture that I'm going to be promoting for my brand with him or her? Okay, so that's something that you need to think about. There's also a growing interest in DEI for any type of influencer contents. we all know everything stays on the internet. We talked about the cancel culture, and that cancel culture happens quite frequently with the people we know as influencer as well, right? So those are the kind of things that you need to think about. Kid influencers is a good example. You probably got the tone from me that I'm like all against it. I think there needs to be more regulation on it than it is now. I always tell my kid that, you know, you're a certain age only once. You need to live that age. You don't pretend to be an 18-year-old when you're 9. That's kind of doing injustice to your current age of 9. But, you know, there's a parenting principle difference, but kind of going back to what is the culture am I promoting? If I am reaching out to these kid influencers or kidfluencers, if you call them, how does it relate to my brand? How is that connecting with my culture? That's the kind of strategic as well as ethical decisions that we need to make, especially with the fact that this influencer content, influencer marketing is kind of on the spotlight these days, particularly in terms of social media ethics and DEI and I can't speak today, and professional contents that could be promoted on social media. So that's the lecture for this week. Please make sure that you read chapter 8 of your textbook as well. And I will talk to you guys soon.